I am YouTuber FZappa20 and you are about to watch a video by the Jammin' Music Man, a guy that I once described as the nicest dude on the internet. I'm sticking to that statement. You'll see it in the videos here. He brings a sincere enthusiasm on every subject he hits. Music, wrestling, movies, whatever it is. His videos are fun like you're about to see right now.
Thank you for watching my new video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching.
What's up, guys? It's me, Jammin' Music Man, back here again with an all-new video. And in this video, I'm going to show you guys some electronic albums that I've been listening to lately. I'm a big fan of electronic music, from Craftworks to Daft Punk to the Chemical Brothers to the Prodigy. Love all that stuff. And just going to show you guys what albums I've been listening to. So, enough of the chit chat. Let's get on with the video. Alright, you guys, this first album I'm going to show you is by one of my all-time favorite electronic groups. And to me, these guys are electronic music legends. And the artist and the album that I'm talking about Daft Punk's Human After All album. Great album, but for me, I would have to say I prefer Daft Punk's debut album and their second record more so than this third album. Their debut album was 97's Homework, and their second album was 2001's Discovery. For me, I love a lot of the songs that are on the Discovery album. Like One More Time, I remember that being like a big hit back in the early 2000s. But you know, Human After All, it's their third studio album. It came out in 2005, and I certainly remember a lot of these, a lot of the music videos that came off this album. I certainly remember them getting a lot of airplay on MTV during this time, like Robot Rock. And you know, if you know Daft Punk, they certainly always have great, memorable, classic music videos that just stick with you. And Robot Rock, love that video. It's got that early 80s type of MTV look to it. But you know, some of my favorite tracks on this album are Robot Rock, Human After All, Technologic, Emotion. There's 10 tracks in all, and each song is just catchy. Some songs are a little bit more driving than others on the album, but all in all, it's a great electronic album, and I picked it up for $7.99 at my local Barnes and Nobles. But you know, if you want to get into Daft Punk, I mean, I certainly recommend, you know, picking up this album. And if you love electronic music, you won't be disappointed. I mean, these guys, like I said, electronic music legends to me. But guys, that's Daft Punk's Human After All. Alright guys, this next album I'm going to show you, I actually did an album review for this album a while back here on my channel. And I gotta say, this group right here were one of the, you know, leading electronic music acts of the 1990s. And this is their debut album. And the group in the album that I'm talking about, it's 9 Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine. And of course, when you think of 9 Inch Nails, you think of one person, that's Trent Reznor. And certainly throughout the 1990s, you know, they were very popular. And, you know, I remember watching their Woodstock 94 performance back in the day. That was classic. But this right here is their debut album. You get 10 tracks in all. And a lot of the subject matter you find on this album deals from, you know, lust, obsession, sex, religion. It's very angsty. Of course, a lot of the music in the 90s was very angsty. And, you know, this album right here was certainly an underground indie hit. I remember Head Like a Hole. That was a big MTV hit back in the day. Some of my favorite tracks on this album: Head Like a Hole, Terrible Eye, Something I Can Never Have, Ring Finger. But all in all, great classic electronic album. And I want to say during the recording process of this album, Trent Reznor played a lot of the parts on this album. And I want to say before this album was recorded, I want to say Trent Reznor was working at like a studio as a janitor, and on his off time, his free time, he was writing and recording the songs that would go on to this album. But all in all, it's a great electronic album you should have in your collection, and that's the debut album from 9 Inch Nails. Alright guys, these next two albums, I actually did some album reviews of these albums a while back here on my channel, and those albums I'm talking about are the Human League's Reproduction album and the Human League's Travelogue album. I love the late 70s, early 80s synth sound. I love the early Human League. This is back when the Human League were an all-boys club. Certainly during this time they got a lot of critical praise, but they were yet to achieve the pop success that they were going to have with 1981's Dare album. Each album is really dark, but you can also hear that catchy pop melodies in their music during this time. But like I said, they got a lot of critical praise. I know Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols during this time labeled the group trendy hippies. But I'll first start off with their debut album, Reproduction. This album came out in 1979, and certainly by 79, a lot of synth pop acts were showing up. Synth pop groups like OMD, Human League, a couple others that were definitely influenced by Kraftwerk and pop music. But Reproduction, some of my favorite tracks: The Path of Least Resistance, Blind Youth. They also do a really great dark synth cover of You've Lost That Love and Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. But I love this album right here, and it's a great debut album. And their second record, Travelogue. I love each of these album covers, by the way. But Travelogue, some of my favorite tracks, Only After Dark. I remember hearing this song in like a car commercial back in the day. Might have been around the late 90s, early 2000s. But when I heard this on the album, I immediately remember hearing it in a car commercial back in the day. But I love the song, Only After Dark, great track. Another favorite song I like on this album, Crow and a Baby, and they also got Being Bold. There's actually a couple of versions of Being Bold that the Human League recorded, but all in all, great synth classics right here. And if you want to get to the early Human League, definitely recommend picking up these two albums right here. And if you love that late 70s, early 80s synth sound, you're definitely going to love these albums. But that's the Human League's Reproduction and the Human League's Travelogue. Alright guys, these next two albums are by what I consider music legends, and these guys are definitely pioneers of electronic music. I'm talking about Kraftwerks' Autobahn album and Kraftwerks' The Man Machine album. I mean, what more can you say about Kraftwerk? From Daft Punk to the Human League to the Chemical Brothers to the Prodigy, they've all been influenced by Kraftwerk. And when you open up the history books and you see where electronic music got its start, it's always going to trace back to Kraftwerk. And certainly, synthesizers and, there was some electronic music that were going on before Kraftwerk, but nobody pushed electronic music to the mainstream quite like Kraftwerk did. And I mean, Kraftwerk influenced many generations of electronic acts. But I'll first start off talking about Kraftwerk's Autobahn album. This was the album that people saw Kraftwerk go into, the electronic direction. When Kraftwerk first got together and were putting out albums. They were a krautrock band. They were definitely experimental rock, jazz fusion type of band. But when this album came out, the whole world saw, the future of what music could be. And of course, the opening track, Autobahn, it's a 23-minute epic classic. And some of you might say this album, it's not a true electronic album, which is true, but you do get synth, and you do get flutes and violins, I believe, and some acoustic sounds. But definitely Autobahn is the big, epic song on this album, and it definitely showed the world that Kraftwerk were going to push, electronic music onto the world. But all in all, this album right here, I picked it up at Barnes and Nobles for like $9.99, and it's a classic. But their next album right here, this was definitely the Kraftwerk full-on electronic music during this time. This album came out in 1978. There's only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 6 tracks on this whole album, but each track classic. The Robots, love this song. You got to go check out the music video for the Robots. Classic. Space Lab, Metropolis, The Model. The Model would later become a big dance club hit in 1982. When this album came out in 1978, I believe there was some DJ in some club found like the B-side of one of their records, which had The Model on it, and it became a big pop hit back in the early 80s. Neon Lights and The Man Machine. But I love the album cover. I mean, classic stuff right there. A lot of people during this time were calling their look like, are they communists? Like, what's going on? But this album right here is a classic and one of my personal favorites. And I also love Trans Europe Express, which I have that album. But trying to get back into the slip here. But all in all, I love Kraftwerk. These guys are legends, and you definitely gotta have these 2 albums in your collection if you want to start off listening to the early years of electronic music. But guys, I'm Jammin' Music Man. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I hope to hear from you guys. But I'm Jammin' Music Man, and I will see you guys next time.